Hey there, thieves and illusionists.
In this week's Limelight, we're chatting with Max about OSR combat encounters.
Let's roll initiative. Max, welcome back to Campaign Spotlight.
My pleasure to be here.
I think you were the first person that we've had on the show for a second time.
Really? Am I the first repeat guest?
I think you are, yeah.
Hell yeah.
It's a pleasure to get to chat with you again. Last time when you were on the show, we talked a lot about OSR games and kind of the style of gameplay that you love.
Yeah,
and
man.
one aspect of that I wanted to hear more from you about, because I think it's A, a lot of fun, and B, works well in a lot of different gameplay styles, is exploration.
Yeah. Happy to talk about it. So kind of first order of business is like kind of defining my terms a little bit. Because exploration, right? Okay. So one like key insight, and I'm gonna just attribute it to 5e.
Sure.
But because it's kind of like a informative pillar of that, but it might have predated that, is the idea that there's three pillars of gameplay, which is combat, social encounters, and exploration, right? And this is like a really helpful insight, especially for a dungeon master. And I think that or game master, whatever you want to say. And I think that it's important to say that exploration is for sure the biggest pillar of that. And it's not just limited to hex crawls, and this is where I'll be a little bit of like a slippery guy here. But I basically consider the entire exploration pillar to be defined as just world interaction in general. I narrate the interior of a room to you, and then the choice that you make in how you choose to interact with that room is, in my mind, just as much, honestly, maybe more definitionally a part of exploration than any particular, we're doing a point crawl, we're doing a hex crawl, anything like that. Now, those obviously do factor into exploration, but it is kind of a vast thing. And it's one of the things that actually got me to kind of be led astray from what I originally played, which was 5e, to go into more old school systems. Yeah. Right. I got a lot to say on that, but I mean, what are you curious about that I may ramble endlessly on?
I mean, I'd love to drill down more into these definitions you've proposed, because when I think of the line between, what is and isn't exploration. So first off, I think we can stipulate that the idea of exploration, as in like, oh, the whole world is wild and there's just like stuff happening out there and you're going to encounter hazards in the wilderness, that's just a subset of what exploration is. And I for sure agree with you there. Mm-hmm. But a lot of what you're describing, what do you interact with in a room, if it's like a book or an NPC or something like that, that does seem to shade into more of the socialization aspect. I guess is the dividing line to you, if there's an NPC I'm interacting with, that's socializing, and if there's not, and I'm just learning about the world like diegetically, that's exploring? Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I would probably say that's solid. I'm sure that there's some more poetic way that I could put it, but yeah, like I think social gameplay relies on the use of NPCs. And obviously, I mean, depending on your games, the culture at your table, also inter-party interaction too, though that can like vary wildly. But yeah, I think for a social encounter, you would need two characters. Whereas, like I say, I really like the term world interaction.
Okay.
I think that in any interaction with just the world that you're in counts as exploration.
And so this is both in terms of like learning about what's going on around you, but also in terms of very short-term hazards you might need to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, think about the reward. Here, hold on. There's a baby monitor
Sure.
going behind me.
Oh. Congratulations, by the way. Big news since the last episode.
Thank you so much. Actually, ironically enough, that wasn't the baby. That was actually just my wife moving some stuff
Okay.
around. But yeah, no, it's been a wild ride. But I'll talk about that on the baby themed episode. But
Perfect, yeah. Our other show, yeah.
yeah. Dungeons and doulas. No, what was I?
Ooh, that's actually really good.
Our doula actually gifted us a set of polyhedral dice, so that was very sweet. But
That is the most painfully Seattle sentence I've ever heard.
it is. Oh my gosh! If I had like just said something about coffee, I guess then it would have been. Anyways, oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I'm derailing myself. So world in a. Oh no. Think about this. Think about the reward system baked into it. Now I'm being kind of reductive, but I'm maybe trying to just illustrate the divisions between these, right? Like the reward system for, something like for like combat is experience points, right? The reward system for like a social interaction is like gaining favor, right? The reward system for exploration is gaining information, right? And that can be that can be present in both of those other pillars, right? So like the exploration component of me talking to you right now, right? Like we'll do a social encounter, and then I learn a bit of lore, from some of the subtext of things you say, or things like that, right? Or like you're fighting an owl bear, and let's say like the owl bear, you get close, the fighter's close enough to see that the owl bear has a third eye, and that's our first clue that there's an alchemist that's fucking with the owl bears in this cave or something, right? And that is exploration, right? That's not
Right.
Does that make sense? It's the pillar that's the probably the hardest to quantify in some ways.
Right, and it sounds like the way you're defining it, this is a pillar that is really all about the player's intrinsic motivation about the story. Like, they're not going to get better at fighting. They're not going to level up or get, like, faction points or anything like that. They're just going to uncover more of the narrative and move the plot forward from what you're describing.
Yeah, and I would say, obviously, that I think that exploration and story are two components that are pulling in opposite directions, right? And so in a more exploration-based campaign, you're going to turn the knob for the plot specifically. There's a story for everything, but you're going to kind of turn the levels of plot down, right, to better accommodate a better emphasis on exploration, right, which is intrinsically like non-linear. And then on something that is more plot-based, which is a perfectly reasonable way to play certain games, you're going to turn down that exploration in certain ways, right? And that's where I do think, like, obviously a good way of, I think, kind of capturing some of the philosophy of exploration-based gameplay is by playing in something like a hex crawl, where you can just, I would say this is a very plot light design would be like, hey, we're just going to literally pick a direction out of town, and we're just going to walk in that direction knowing that there's something there. But I think kind of to part of the question you were asking there of just like, it's about the player's investment in the story. I think like you said, I think the way I would say that specifically, in a way that would work for both more story gaming and more exploration-based gaming or location-based adventures, would be what I would say is the player's immersion in the world, right? Because I think that works for both cases, right? I'm interested in the story. I'm invested in the stakes of this world, right? I think immersion in the world is more how I would describe it, yeah.
I really like that explanation because, or that goal, because it kind of beat me to my next question, which was a lot of our guests come on and talk about campaigns that are all one long plot, right? They're
Yeah.
one long story.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to do over the course of a campaign or the course of your time playing together is uncover that plot, tell that story, and you know, get to a point where if this were a novel or if this were like a, you know, a serialized fiction of some kind, we would all feel like that was a satisfying ending. Whereas in a world with a lot more exploration, you know, that's not really how it's going, right?
Yeah.
And I guess this definition of immersion works well in terms of understanding or explaining what keeps people interested, what keeps people motivated if the answer isn't, we want to see how the big overarching story turns out. Because when you're just walking in a given direction, knowing that there's going to be adventure or story of some kind in that direction, like that's great, that sounds really fun, but how do you sustain the investment or the excitement? And from what you're describing, it sounds like the answer is that immersion.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is a fun question because because what we're kind of doing here is explaining the difference between, like I said, adventure path based design and location based design, and that realistically, I mean, there's a reason why after our last conversation, I'm coming back on to specifically talk digging down into exploration, because realistically, that is actually the branching off point in the taxonomies of modern play and OSR play is just an emphasis on exploration. There's a lot of reasons why that is, and it's kind of a hard explanation to give. But I mean, as far as like, I guess kind of digging down into how you propel that forward, like you were saying, the big thing of it is emergent storytelling, right? So the big thing for me, and I think so many people now, and this wasn't the case, you know, back in the Gygaxian gaming club era stuff, for obvious reasons, so many people now come to tabletop games with a lot of built-in knowledge of video games as their starting point, as opposed to the opposite, right? And so that's where, you know, a lot of games had this really obvious substrate connecting all of them, which was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, right? And that's why like a lot of old games are like almost more or less rip-offs of it, right? I mean, even in Japan, right? Like the inspiration of something like Dragon Quest is like unbelievable, right? So
also old video games are Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, right? If you play Rogue, that has a ton of AD&D DNA in it.
Oh no, that's exactly what I mean, right? Is okay. and now the iterative process of video games is so many cycles away from that it's kind of aping itself now. But anyways, the point. Well, now the funny thing is it's almost like it's like Baudrillard's like idea of simulacra or something, right? Where it's like it's copies of copies of copies without a beginning now. And so video games, which were a copy of D&D, are now making D&D kind of a copy of video games, right? And one thing, and my point, I know I'm making a wide sweeping point here, to hunker down on my real point here, is the big thing that that video games can't do is two things, but one of them is my main point. The first one is tactical infinity, right? This is a thing people say online, which is basically just you are able to make any choice, right? And that's like the beating heart of the whole thing, right? But in this case, when we're talking about exploration-based, story-based, the thing that tabletop can do that games really can't do is they sustain a shared creative space, right? And so the idea, and don't get me wrong, like even now in this open world, almost kind of quasi West Marches style campaign that I run, I still structure certain adventures, I'll say, in a plot-based linear way, right? But those are almost kind of taken off the shelf in a sandbox, and I only kind of do it if I need to. If you run an exploration-based, not plotted out campaign, and the assumption here is that you have good players, right? You have great players that know, right? That know what the stakes are, which is, hey, like Like there's a lot of more emphasis put on you guys. You are not passive recipients of this, right? You're not on fucking Space Mountain. Like you're making choices here, and I'm kind of taking the backseat there. It is inevitable that stories merge out of that, and you get this really rich human drama, which, you know, I've run so many adventure-based. I mean, I've kind of gone on everybody's trajectory a little bit. Like I've played years of my plotted out kind of masterful story that I'm going to do in a modern system, and fucking A, you can do that in an OSR system too, right? I mean, you can do that with anything, right? And the thing at the end of the day that's always the most important part of that is the drama that just naturally rises from the characters and them interacting with the game world. And like my bad guy and his like overdeveloped, overwrought, stupid plot and all of that basically like exists in a completely different quantum space than what the characters are doing. And what the characters are doing is creating the actual fucking story. And so I think that having a location-based narrative is kind of taking a trust fall and kind of like having that radical adjustment to be like I'm going to learn from that pattern, which is that's what the real story is, and I'm just going to fully commit to that. But the difficulty with that is that you need to go into a session after a week of getting yourself hyped up, and after a week of everyone potentially having a shitty week at work, and like this is the thing they're looking forward to, and be like, I have nothing fucking planned except for this madhouse I'm going to send you guys into, and like I think that you guys will make magic. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to actually get into what it takes to get players bought in and invested. Before we get there though, because you have been running this cool campaign,
Yeah.
would you be up for sharing with the audience an example of the type of emergent storytelling that does arise in this kind of exploration-based game?
Yeah, absolutely. Easy. I'm running actually a new system. I'm running a campaign. We're about 7 sessions in Shadow Dark, which if you guys haven't played it, I can't recommend it enough. I mean, it's basically BX D&D meets 5e D&D as far as a lot of things, whatever. And
we'll absolutely link to it in the show notes. Yeah.
There we go. And I started the campaign with basically one shots for each character's origin, and they also started with like a stable of level 0 characters, so that if they died, they had somebody, right? Somebody was having their story told. And the fighter of the group, which was I did basically sort of a Land of the Lost style setting. So it's an untamed continent, and there's a tribal hunter, and he's the fighter, right? And this campaign is basically him going along, or the session, over the course of it, he's going along with this group of explorers, and over the course of the session, all of the members of his tribe that were his level 0 characters were just slaughtered. And then in the end, he left the final one, right? And this is player choice, right? He left the final one to hold off a monster that was coming for them, right? And we leave the scene, right? And it's like, it's brutal, right? And he presumably dies off screen, right? Okay, all right. Well, I take a note of it because I'm not a fucking moron that this is gold, right? And a couple sessions ago, he's in the city, which I've named Numina, and he's doing, what I kind of referred to earlier. I have certain plot adventure paths that are seeded throughout the city here and there, and one of them is an arena, and the champion for the first tier of the arena is none other than that fucking member of his tribe that he left there to hold off the monster, right? And I don't know this until literally I'm like, just, it's at the end of the last session before that.
Sure.
And I'm like, it would just be a great idea if I just twisted the fucking knife. Because he's like, oh, my character's kind of lonely, and I'm like alienated by this new culture that I'm in, and I'm a fish out of water. And I'm like, okay, yeah, word. So you want to find some like-minded people? Let's do that. And he ends up killing him in an arena fight, and he kills the last remaining member of his people. And we have kind of completed the first act of a I like to think a pretty rich story arc. Now, again, half the thing is though is this is like professional wrestling, right? Like,
Right.
You're not the one guy's not throwing the other guy. He's looking like he's throwing the other guy, and the other guy's throwing all his weight along with it, right? Like, I have a good player who's giving me all of this, and he's running with he's getting thrown along, thrown himself as I'm kind of tossing his character in these directions, and it takes a lot of trust. And I can understand how that might be difficult for people that are like stuck with randos or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, how did your party overall respond to like this revelation that, hey, he's gonna have to fight this NPC who somehow survived?
It was great, and it was emotionally devastating. I mean, I like to just emotionally devastate them. And
it was great. It was emotionally devastating.
Yeah. Well, no, but again, but that honestly is great though, because that's that's like actual drama. That's the actual content of what I would want out of a story. And it's actually an immersive experience. What would it be like being this person? And it's like, well, like, you're shocked in the same way that this person would be shocked. He killed him because this person resented him for leaving him. And now he's basically in disbelief that this person would hate him, and he doesn't understand why really fully. And so I'm using that as a writing prompt, and he's basically telling me, because that's the thing, at the end of every session with this kind of style, you do the crazy advanced DMing technique of going, cool, what do you want to do next? And then you just prep that, and you just don't plan beyond that. And so what I'm doing is, he said, gosh, I want to figure out who was sponsoring this fighter, because every fighter in the arena has a patron, a sponsor, basically, right? And I gave him a lead, someone's initials. And I don't know, like 3 days ago, I just decided this is going to be a vampire, one of the nobles in the city that's a vampire. And she like kind of glamored and warped this guy's brain to make him like hate my friend's character. And then he has like a great villain to want to destroy.
Hey, Riley here, asking for your support in keeping Campaign Spotlight running. Jake and I started this podcast to showcase the creativity of home TTRPG campaigns. Since then, we've released over 50 episodes, including long-form interviews, on-site recordings, and historical deep dives. If you enjoy the show, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/campaignspotlight. Your support lets us keep talking about TTRPGs without having to optimize for algorithmic virality, and also grants you the ability to understand a new system's flanking rules the first time you read them.
I had already kind of had this idea of the nobles of this city are vampires. All of the virtuous nobles have left, and we're kind of left with just the kind of ignoble, horrible vampires, basically. And so who is the sponsor of this guy, right? Well, my original idea was just that he resented that he was left for dead in that session, and the character's confused by that. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. I forgot how much we lost there. The character's confused, but also the player feels a little confused. Like, wait, but he hated that? And so then just taking that and going like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to use that as a prompt and make it so that like his resentment actually was magnified by the glamours of this vampire who kind of warped his brain. And so now this character has a fucking heel that's extremely powerful in every imaginable way.
And this is an interesting interaction to me. First off, this is a very like just a cool story concept. But second, what you're describing doesn't really have much to do with, coming up with some formal dynamics for exploration per se. Because I feel like a lot of the guidebooks and instructions online about how to run like a real exploration flavored campaign are like, boy, every hex needs like a different D100 table depending on what kind of terrain you're going to encounter, and the richness is going to come out of people rolling interesting successions of options. But what you're describing is, hey, they got into some kind of combat while they're out exploring, and then later on that became, many sessions later, that became like a what they found became a story element, but it didn't really have much to do with like what they uncovered while they were out in the wilderness.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think that, I mean, for what it's worth, like kind of getting to this philosophy of game design, actually the first thing is that I designed a hex crawl, and it just has such fundamentally different philosophies behind it that I think it kind of put me on the course to get here. But yeah, I mean, like it's it's not, I don't know. I don't want to act like those don't have connective tissue, but it is much more than that. And I think that honestly, I think that if someone is mistaking exploration for basically like the closed system of like finely defined rules for basically a subsystem of the game, i.e. hex crawling, if that's all they understand exploration to be, I think it's like safe to say that that's in some ways like the exact opposite of exploration, because again, it's that it's the infinite potential part of the game is what exploration is, and hex crawling is an implement to structure play in order to try to emphasize that, but hex crawling is it's kind of its own thing. It's kind of it's I'm not describing it well now. Hex crawling is a subsystem of it. And I think that if someone, well, really, really fast, like just like if someone were to bridge the gap, because I don't want to just totally fall on my face here. If someone were to say, I want to make a campaign that's based on a hex crawl, then the design philosophy that I'm describing would be the thing that worked a lot better for them than a plot. And there's something there. There's reasons for that. But again, it's an implement, not the whole thing. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I think in the limiting case where the campaign really is, hey, we're rolling on different tables depending on what kind of terrain we're in, and that's going to determine what we do next. In that limiting case, you are infinitely better off to just play a video game that kind of has all of that written already, because like, people whose job it is to create that experience that runs on rails but can have all that randomness and all that surprise to it, that's a problem that we've kind of already solved through a means other than TTRPGs. And the kind of, go for it.
No, sorry to cut you off, but just this idea of, and you see this a lot, people being like, bro, the average hex is 6 miles across. I mean, there's a lot of square mileage there, man. Like, there's a lot of stuff here. You have to have 17 keyed locations for each hex, and the minimum size of a map needs to be 60 hexes. And it's like, dude, like, what are you expecting me to do with that? You know what I mean? That's dog shit, and I don't want to play that. And I think to be fair, understand that like if that's fun for you to do, that is great, but what you're doing is a different thing than playing the game. What you're doing is like playing your own game of D&D prep, and I love playing the game of D&D prep, and that's a fun game, here. And I do tons of it, right? But like the game itself is completely different, right? The game itself is completely different, and for me, and this is where it gets to, I don't know the architecture of everyone's mind, but for me, you want to build yourself tools that guide your cognition whatever that individually is for you, right? And for me, I want as little mental load as possible during a game, right? Uh, and so keying a hex for me is like literally give me an adjective and a type of creature and a die for rolling how many of them there are. I'm being a little hyperbolic, but like ideas do come easily, especially when you have all of your friends sitting at the table throwing prompts at you constantly, right?
I
And
mean,
so this
that's
I
the part that actually.
go
Oh,
ahead.
go for it. Go for it.
Well, just no, and
Oh
so
no, please continue.
just this idea of like uh, I'm gonna I'm gonna start a world exploration game,
Yes.
and it's gonna begin when I describe every single placement of every pine cone in the world and things like that. Like G.K. Chesterton has this quote about like the foolishness of the man who thought he could hold all of creation in his mind at once, right? And how absurd that is, because of course you can't hold all these ideas in your head at once. And that's what I think about that idea of the over planning approach to wilderness. Is it's like plan elements for randomness, plan tables, and I mean make locations for sure, but it's got to be lightweight. It's got to be lightweight because all of that sauce, all of that spice isn't going to come from you sitting alone in a room. It's going to come from like you and your friends riffing off each other.
I mean, the part that I think you were lucky to have in your context, and that means you don't really have to place every single rock and blade of grass and kind of make your giant world of interactive fiction, of which the players only ever get to experience a small snippet. The reason you can avoid all that is that you do have these players who are, bought into the world, bought into the style of improvising, and recognize that they're doing something that isn't playing a video game.
Ding ding
So I
ding.
guess
Yeah.
what would you say to people who either their players are new, or they're new to the style of DMing, or not to sound overly negative, they maybe have watched some actual plays and came away from them with a very different sense of like what a player's role and what a GM's role is. I guess
Yeah.
how would you go about getting people bought in to this world where, hey, there's not a lot planned. There isn't a 50 session long narrative that you're going to have to uncover. I'm counting on you and your emotional responses to drive a lot of the story along the way. Like, how do you get people prepped and primed for that kind of gameplay?
So there's two answers, right? One's the formal one, and it's probably the best one, and then one's the in the trenches
Sure.
intuitive one. And I'll give the intuitive one first, which is however best you think you can do that. Um, if you think explaining it to everybody, hey, this is the kind of story, and then basically just like doing things to create. One thing that I always like to remind myself is that it's like you can really pour into the systems and subsystems and numbers and letters on the page of the system.
Right.
But like at the end of the day, what the game really is sitting at a table with people and like riffing and talking. And so, I mean, wield your fucking social skills. You know what I mean? Like whatever that means for anybody. Like just be. I mean, that's kind of a boring answer, but the informal answer is I don't know, whatever, right? The much more interesting, fun answer, but I think that that's not like nothing, right? Like I do think
Sure.
it's just like fucking connect with people, and like and like figure out like what someone is interested in, and like how they would articulate it. Now the real answer, and this is again one of the nice seamless, is how I would say aspects of OSR design, old school kind of design, is gold for XP. That's
Sure.
the answer, right? Gold for XP. The game's about what is rewarded, right? One of the big banes of my existence, and I totally get it, and it's based in conscientiousness of people. But one of the things that drives me nuts is, and then I have this with my group of players who are great and great friends, But like, it is inevitable that a group is going to become kind of blinded in how they play by the fact that, one, this is simply just game night, and so we do
Yep.
game night and we're going through the motions. And of course now everyone does milestone leveling because this is just the culture of play. And then two, the idea that people are actually just interacting with the world by trying to feel out and get a sense of what I want them to do. And that's how you have to play a narrative-based game, and that still happens in my campaigns. And I hate it, and I hate it, and I understand why it's the case. But I think being able to just kind of cut some of that away and just emphasize, like, a game is about what it rewards, right? A game is about what it rewards, right? You level up through getting gold. There's gold in dungeons. That's what you do.
And so you really put, like, you say, hey, here is the reward. I'm going to put it on a high shelf, and you're going to have to figure out how to get up to that shelf. And you make that really, I guess, explicit at the beginning that that's what they're trying to do?
What do you mean you make it really explicit that that's what they're trying to do?
So it sounds almost like what you're suggesting is that you make the reward and the objective to players really clear at the beginning, right? And you kind of put up on a high shelf and you say, like, hey, here's the thing you're going for. Here's the thing that's going to reward you and let you have a cool time, and you have to figure out how to get up there. And, like, it sounds like you make it explicit that, like, XP is gold. Leveling and getting more abilities is going to come from getting gold, and gold comes from dungeons. And it sounds like you really need to establish that with your players up front. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, and I think well, I want to give two parts of the answer here, which is one, yes, like that is the raw motivation, right? And that is like the foundation of like exploration based play, right? But as far as the then kind of being co-authors thing, right. I guess I would say, like, yeah, just kind of get a feel for everybody creatively. And yeah, just I like to share the idea of, like, this is a shared creative space. We have shared authorship here, especially because there isn't necessarily a plot that you're going to be stepping on. Like, just do what you want to do here, and understand that, like, if you have that locking up moment, right? Like every first time person usually does, where they're like, oh, I don't even know what to do. You go, get money. And that's the answer that they go to. And then cool things happen when, like, their character develops enough ethos and they get enough of a sense of their character and enough fondness of their character that maybe they start making decisions that actually, like, are suboptimal for getting money, but it's true to the character and it's what they would want to do. But they don't have to do that in the first session, and that's okay too. But yeah, I think gold for XP, and then just really emphasizing that shared creative space.
And also it sounds like you want to emphasize the shared creative space, and you also want to give people the space to be like, hey, I'm in your first session, you don't need to be creating a work of art and playing perfectly optimally, and that's honestly okay if that's where you're at.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, like, obviously so many people have said this, but that's one of the risks you get from people that have kind of come up watching actual plays, certain large actual plays that I'll not mention, because it's basically just, it's like, it's the D&D equivalent of just, like, having porn brain, right? Like, this isn't a realistic view of reality, and, like, it's not really serving you very well right now, and, like, that's okay. It's okay that, like, we just ended the session with, like, you just cutting a couple goblins up, and, like, you didn't resolve, familial trauma or something, like, we don't need that. That doesn't need to be the thing.
I think this is why when I play, we play for 9 hours. We edited it down to 3 hours. We put in sound effects and visual overlays, and that is the experience that every player deserves.
Yeah, yeah, right. Right. And so yeah, so that's kind of my thing. It is just like, honestly, I'll for maybe one of my final points here, I'll sweeten the pot by even just saying it in such a flattering way. That I think also, like, if you want to have that, like, we're really co-authors here, we have this like much more free-form game and all of that, be okay with like having sessions that are shitty. Just having a session where you're like, man, that just like just wasn't the one this week, because like that's okay, and that's like not, that's just inevitable, and that's just something that they're not all going to be winners, and that's okay, and I think that that's also actually like a lot easier to stomach than one of those things where it's like, this is the ultimate payoff to my 6-month-long story arc, and you do it, and literally none of it landed, and like my friend who plays the fighter was grabbing a piece of pizza at the reveal, and like someone was checking their phone, and someone just made a dick joke right before I made the really dramatic flourish, and because it's my singular story, this like reflects bad on me as a person and my value.
I have failed my friends personally because the dice were not sufficiently compelling in this finale session.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, no, that's actually like not anything wrong with you. You're just like you're like fundamentally imposing a structure that is like mutually exclusive with like the qualities of this medium. And like, and when there's dissonance between those two things, you just think that you're a fucking idiot. And it's like, no, like I don't, like yeah.
No, I get what you mean. This is honestly a beautiful point. It is okay to have bad sessions. It is not okay to have bad podcast episodes, though, and you provided us with an incredible one.
Well, thank you so much. 2 for 2, baby.
It's been great talking with you, and yeah, look forward to the third time you come on the show.
I am counting the days.
That's all for this week. I'm Dungeon Inspector Jake.
And I'm Production Master Riley.
If you enjoy the show, consider subscribing and leaving a review, which helps other people find Campaign Spotlight.
And if you'd like to support our work, consider going to patreon.com/campaignspotlight and becoming a patron.
And if your GM insists that combat is more fun when the terrain itself is attacking you, that's a weird hill to die on.
For more on the show, including links to all our social media, visit folderfrequencies.com/campaignspotlight.